tall tapered planters like these can be so expensive. If you want to build them yourself, they look intimidating, right? Well, in this video, I'm going to make it easy and cost effective. To build this planter, I'm using cedar fence pickets, some 1x2 and 1x3 furring strips, I'm using a speed square, tape measure, safety glasses, a circular saw, and an 18 gauge brad nailer. I'll also use a drill later on in the project. Alright, so I decided to try a little bit different way of building this tapered planter just because there is a lot of cuts, and there's a lot of cuts at an angle. So what if you don't have a miter saw and you know it gets really time consuming to make all these little tiny cuts. So I thought, what if I lay out all of the cedar fence pickets, and you can go as many or as few as you want, and then I just cut 4 1x2s to the width of all the fence pickets, so I'm right at 22 inches. And then I took my speed square and marked a 5-degree angle on top of the cedar fence pickets. I'm just going to lay out the first 1x2 on top of the cedar fence pickets. So this is kind of like quilting, where you'll cut, sew fabric together and then cut it all at the same time, so you're not making a zillion little tiny cuts. You're attaching the fabric together first and then cutting them all at once, so it reduces the number of cuts, and it also gets you a more accurate cut. It's, when you work at an angle, it's really hard to get exact cuts from a long point to a short point, if that makes sense. So I'm just nailing the 1x2s to the top of the fence pickets with 1-inch brad nails. And you want to make sure you're not going too long with your nails so they go through your cedar fence pickets. So what I'm going to do here is make the next side. And don't worry about writing all this down. I have the free project plans that have the exact pattern of where you need to nail every board and how far the spacing should be and all that. So just enjoy and watch. And if you want to build it, you can head on over there and download those plans, and this will all make sense, so no need to take notes. Okay, so you can see here I've got 2 sides already created, and then 2 additional sides that aren't attached to 1x2s that will attach in later steps. And then I thought, you know what, let me go ahead while all these boards are attached together and cut that angle on the end at a 5-degree as well. I'm just going to go ahead and mark it. That's the 5-degree. And you don't have to use a 5-degree, but I wouldn't recommend anything more. So you could use a smaller taper, like a 2 or a 3-degree, but anything more than a 5-degree, the taper is going to be pretty heavy. Okay, so it's really easy to cut all these boards when you can just clamp one down and cut them instead of having to clamp multiple. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of cutting that end off and getting that 5-degree cut on that entire end. Is it all making sense what I'm doing now? All right, so these will be the free pieces that I'll attach in later steps. And you just follow the 1x2, don't cut into it, just cut right alongside of it. They are all cut. So I'm going to say, if you aren't experienced with the circular saw, this is probably not the first project that you want to try, because you do need to run that saw blade right next to that 1x2. It's not hard to do, but definitely it takes a little bit of practice to get it just right. And you can see I use that 1x3 to support the other end of my circular saw foot, just so that I can hold that circular saw exactly level as I'm cutting. Alright, so I'm going to trim off that end while I still got a lot of material to work with, and it's easy to clamp to my table. So all those little pieces falling to the ground are just going to be scraps. Alright, last cut in this one. So I had been kind of dreading building these tapered planters because I was thinking of all these cuts and it's going to be time consuming, and are all the angles going to match up? But seriously, I'm into this project about 10-15 minutes at this point. And that's all the scraps that are left over. All right, so assembly time. So I wanted to have like the framed corners on the outside of the cedar fence pickets, just so it gives the planter kind of more of a finished look. So I am adding some 1x3s to those 1x2s. This is going to serve as really the structure for this project. So I'm using glue, and I think I put 1.25 inch nails there. So this is not hard. And then I'm just lining my 1x3 up with my 1x2. So you may be thinking, you know, why wood planters? Why not just buy a plastic planter? And there's quite a few reasons. One, these are really inexpensive. So depending on how cheap you can get your cedar fence pickets, the planters can range from anywhere from like $10 to $15 to $20 to $30. So very inexpensive, especially if you're making a lot of them. And you know, if you're trying to add that rustic wood grain to the exterior of your home, this is a great way of doing it. You're using real wood, and it's just going to add a texture that you can't get with plastic. The other thing is with plastic, it's not biodegradable. So if in 5-10 years you're like, I'd like to, you know, change up the look of the front of my house, the plastic container is not biodegradable, so it's going to live indefinitely in a landfill, whereas the cedar is, not only is it biodegradable, but it's renewable. So this is just such a better choice, and it's expensive, and you don't have to, it's not going to be very painful if in 10 years you decide you want something different. So that's why I love wood. You know, it's just a better, more responsible choice for home projects, especially if you're like me and you're always updating and changing your mind. Okay, so did that make sense what I'm doing here? I just took those boards that I'd cut off and just started laying them inside the planter and nailing them down with nails. You can see I'm at a little bit of an angle. That's to provide a little bit of a strength, and also because I got lazy and kept the 1.25 inch nails in, and if I went at an angle, it makes the wood a little bit longer so my nail doesn't come through the end. Okay, so I mean, that is it. I think it just turned out beautiful. I was really like in shock here. So I loved it so much, I wanted to add a little bit more strength to it. So I have some 1.25 inch screws, and the structure is really in those corners. So I'm just adding a couple screws to the top and the bottom row of the cedar fence pickets to give it some more rigidness. Isn't that pretty? So I will say the corners at the top and the bottom are not going to be perfect on these guys. The only way you're going to get that is if you do like a double bevel on the corners, but I didn't think it was necessary because my plants are going to cover that whole top, so I felt like this was just fine. I just wanted to make those wood grain pop, just to give you that benefit of it not being plastic. So I'm using this clear cedar finish. It does have a slight tint to it. I think it is just really a pretty classic light wood look. The tapered planters are all done, and I put the stain on them and they look really fantastic. But now what? So you could put just a plastic pot in there and grow a plant in there. The other thing you could do is just put landscaping fabric and throw soil in there, but that's a lot of wasted soil. If this is not on a deck, say it's just out in your landscaping, what you could do is fill the bottom with like large rocks, something to keep it in place, then put landscaping fabric down and then fill it with soil, so you're not filling the entire thing with soil and, you know, spending a lot of money on soil. But what if you want it on your deck and you don't have a potted plant? So I want to show you how to kind of put a false bottom in here. I'm just going to use some scrap wood that I have. Nothing fancy is needed here. So just kind of figure out how deep you want that soil to go down. So, you know, different types of plants will need more or less soil. And then just take a measurement. So, and you don't have to be exact here. So I'm getting about 17 inches. So I'm going to cut 2 of these at 17 inches. But I'm going to recommend throwing a screw, you can use those 1.25 inch ones, in each corner and hold it in place. Okay, so that's got a bottom in there, so you can screw those down, nail them down. You can set a pot in there now or landscape fabric and fill it with soil and you're good to go. All right guys, they're all done. I found some trees to put in it and I just love how they turned out. If you want to build these yourself, head on over to my website. The link is in the description below, and I've got the cut list and the patterns and everything that you need to make these in 3 different sizes so you can get the exact size. I do want to warn you that the large one is very large, and even the smaller one is quite considerable in size. So I don't know if, I just wanted to warn you, because when you make it, you could almost fit inside of it. So anyway, enjoy building them. Thank you again for watching this week's video, and we'll see you next week.